Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. Ukraine War News Update, third part thereof for the 23rd of February 2025. This is a military aid video. There's a lot to go through because actually there's been a couple of days I haven't done this video, so much going on at the moment, as well you know. Right, let's try and get through this as concisely as possible. Trump has announced for the first time the actual figures of US aid to Ukraine. America provided $67 billion in military aid and $31.5 billion in direct budget support, which is about $100 billion, right? So the total amount of US aid to Ukraine is less than $100 billion, not the $350 billion as Trump had previously stated. So why did Trump lie before, says Jürgen Naudet? Well, what's interesting about this is that he said that and then went to CPAC and then went back to the $350 billion, which makes you wonder whether he just has this core idea in his head, then it gets corrected, and then he goes, oh, okay, talk about that, and then kind of forgets it and goes back to the core idea, which is a really common thing for humans to do. Or whether he is saying numbers purposefully lying because he knows it's all about getting the required outcome from the audience you're talking to, audience, purpose, task, right? So what's my purpose of talking to these people? Who are these people? Audience, purpose, and then the task is, or the form, audience, purpose, form, sometimes seen as. The form is the words you say. So when you're an author, this is what you write. You're like, who are my audience? What's my purpose of writing this? You know, a novel for enjoyment, a persuasive letter, whatever it might be. So he is doing a persuasive piece of rhetoric. The MAGA audience, what's my purpose? I'm going to convince them that my position on Ukraine is correct and they need to go along with me and applaud. So I'm going to say things that are actually disingenuous or outright lies because I want them to more firmly believe that I'm doing the right thing and actually Ukraine are the bad guys, really, and we shouldn't be giving them money. And if I tell them that we've given them 350 billion, then that's going to make them be even more angry, even angrier, and that will then feed into their support for me and what I'm doing. Whereas if I told them the truth, they wouldn't feel so aggrieved. So he's either doing that or he's just forgetting and going back to his core belief. Either way, that's irresponsible. Yeah. Right, Trump has criticised Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer, the French and British leaders, for failing to support Ukraine and not spending enough at the start of the invasion. Well, I think you could say that particularly about Emmanuel Macron. I think many people would level that at the French. But I think right now, certainly rhetorically, they're behind Ukraine. And indeed, as a percentage, I wonder what their percentage of GDP is compared to the US. The US is much further down the list as a percentage of GDP. Then, of course, you can do it in terms of per capita. So, you know, I think this is the pot calling the kettle black here. And, yeah, it's incredibly disingenuous again. That's according to Politico. Quote, Europe is basically giving nothing, giving more than the US, while the US is spending its money on some country that is very, very far away. I mean, I'm so sick and tired of this guy. He's such an absolute donut. Trump believes that Xi Jinping and Putin will cut the military budget in half at his request. This is just insane that he would think this.
The first meetings I want to have is with President Xi of China, President Putin of Russia, and I want to say, let's cut our military budget in half. And we can do that. And I think we'll be able to do it. The first.
I mean, really? They're spending more and more, and you've asked Pete Hegseth to cut the budget by 8% for every year for 5 years, amounting to somewhere between 35 and 40%. Really? You're cutting your budgets right across the board for everything, and Russia and China are spending more, and including on propaganda and outreach and influence operations and projects, and you are slashing budgets and closing down departments. And here you say, I'm just going to have a chat with them, and we're all going to come to an agreement. I think it'll be done that we'll cut our budgets in half. So that $450 billion of expenditure, you're just going to cut that in half. So what will that do to your economy? Like, I'm not one to advocate like massive defense expenditure just because, but actually there are ramifications for that kind of approach, right? All of those people will be out of a job. All that expenditure will be not going into local economies. all that defense expenditure for equipment. I mean, you're going to be lobbied to the moon and back over doing something like that. It's just says these things. It's ridiculous. Now, Rory Stewart, among many other people, are saying, okay, I think you're going to start getting people seeing the US as unreliable and wanting to put their money in more either secure places or just develop their own opportunities themselves. So France will not be the only country to see opportunities in Trump's new order. Expect countries to diversify far away from the US. Expect China to fill the gaps left by USAID from Nepal to Africa. Russia and Germany will sell more weapons systems. The Gulf and Turkey will increase influence in North Africa and the Horn of Africa, as well as Turkey selling more defense stuff themselves, no doubt. Azerbaijan in the Caucasus, but above all, watch China. Watch China. That's on top of Denmark investing in surface-to-air defense systems of various ranges. The choice will be between Patriot and SAMP-T, with lots of people thinking SAMP-T could do pretty well, or the manufacturers of SAMP-T, out of this kind of move away from US equipment. And even David D, who's a staunch Republican, anti-Biden guy, he's now just lost all, I think, support. Like, he is going anti-Trump at the moment, which is massively surprising. He says, hey, Europe, like, he's literally advocating this. Stop buying and building parts for the F-35 today. Switch production to the Tempest. So the Tempest is a BAE Systems co-production possibly with Japan of this new 6th generation fighter that will be obviously European based, or at least not US based. He's saying stop buying and building parts for the F-35 and switch production to the Tempest ASAP. If the US does not want to help Europe anymore, help yourself. Tempest uses F-35 technology but is newer, cheaper, and will be made by Japan and Europe without US restrictions. This will only cost the USA about $1 trillion in sales and spare parts over the next few years. And actually, when you start looking at some of the data on this, the F-35 is incredibly expensive and it locks you in. It's a bit like what happens with, whether it be, I don't know, Microsoft or Adobe or whoever. Rather than buy the things outright now, you buy subscriptions that gets you locked into spending every month, every year for their stuff. Well, this is what's happening with like planes, where you buy into these maintenance and support packages that you keep having to buy into year on year, and it keeps that income coming in. Well, don't lock yourself into these American systems. You cut off the American the dependency on the US, and then go it alone. And that's what he's saying. That's incredible. Kyiv Independent says, to whip the European defence industry into shape, Brussels has appointed a veteran Lithuanian politician, Andrius Kubilius, who we've heard from previously, as its first ever defence commissioner. The Kyiv Independent sat down with Commissioner Kubilius to ask whether the EU is ready to step up in the light of recent shifts in the US. And he said, Europe did more than the US. So pushes back on those Trump accusations. So I'll dip into that, I think, in another video, not today, too much to go through. The EU is preparing a package of about 20 billion euros in additional military support, and that's due to be announced on Monday, but the initiative might be under a bit of pressure. So it's aiming to deliver artillery ammunition, air defense systems, deep precision strike missiles, and other weapons as well. But Italy and France are slowing down the aid package for Ukraine, citing budget constraints and diplomatic concerns. And the package includes 1.5 million rounds, air defense and support and troop training, but faces resistance from Hungary, Slovakia, and now these key European EU players as well. So we'll see how that goes. The UK, they need to announce something big and strong as a riposte to the Americans. The UK government will announce another package of military aid for Ukraine and new sanctions against Russia. And apparently those sanctions are going to be really far-reaching. So David Lammy, I expect we'll hear from David Lammy on Monday, but also a defence package as well. There's also the UK reportedly preparing to send Typhoon fighters, as we've heard previously, but this is now being reported in the war zone. Interestingly, the war zone has been kicked out the Pentagon as having a permanent press seat there. So, to support a future air policing mission over Ukraine. As I've said previously, we are really overstretched in the RAF and have been for a very long time. We commit to more and more things abroad, but we don't have more and more planes. Ukraine expects further F-16 deliveries from the Netherlands, Zelensky says. So that's really good news, because there's a 30-plane delay from Belgium, because the F-35 is delayed. And I was talking about, I didn't know whether that's connected to the stalling of US weapons going abroad to Ukraine. But actually, some people are saying, no, the F-35 is famously delayed, and it's already, I think, been delayed to Belgium as it is. Following his meeting with Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof at the Munich Security Conference, Zelensky stressed that bolstering Ukraine's air defences remains the top priority, so they will get those extra ones from the Netherlands this year. Now, we've heard that to strengthen Ukraine's position and increase pressure on Russia, Estonia is sending 10,000 rounds of artillery, ammunition, and 750,000 food packages for Ukrainian fighters. At the earliest opportunity, this will be supplemented with our own defence industry products worth over 100 million euros. So that's really good that Estonia is stepping up there to help with another aid package. Brilliant. And one day before the upcoming federal elections, which are today, so this was yesterday, in Germany, a high-ranking military delegation led by the Chief of Defence, General Carsten Breuer, visited Ukraine. The delegation affirmed Germany's continued assistance. The current military situation in Ukraine was also discussed, as well as the establishment of new divisions by Russia, which pose a threat not only to Ukraine but also to the whole of Europe, as Zelensky had already noted previously. The agenda also included the German delegation analysing the status of military assistance from allies and the development of the Ukrainian defence industry. And the Ukrainian side, led by the Minister of Defence Rustem Umerov, presented the reforms that the Ukrainian MOD is implementing in the AFU, including new approaches to mobilisation and unit management. There's more information. I'm not going to include it in this video, but I'll say it tomorrow in the other section, in my hits and losses, about the core organisation in the Ukrainian military. Italian defence watcher Nicho Konku reports that many B-1 Centauros wheeled tank destroyers are indeed on their way to Ukraine. So Italy has a total. So I've reported this already. These are the 8-wheeled, kind of a bit similar to the AMX RC10. 10RC that the Ukrainians have got from the French, but not so useful lighter armour. These have actually got heavier armour than those French ones. They've also got 8 wheels, and so they are better in the mud. Italy has a total of 259 in service after 141 were decommissioned and delivered to Jordan previously. So apparently these have, I was reading, they do have stronger frontal armour than the AMX, than the French ones. They are, I think, better. Jeff 2146 was saying these are functionally useless to send. He wouldn't advise sending them, but the Italians are, and some people say no, they are a slightly better bit of kit. Ukraine is developing new long-range weapons, already striking 1,700 kilometers into Russia, according to Sursky. Quote, despite Moscow's failed attempts to seize Ukraine, tough battles lie ahead, and our task is to keep hitting the enemy. So that's good news. We've been hearing that for a long time. They really need to ramp up production of distance strike munitions. Ukraine at an expo recently, and I showed you some stuff from this expo, but here is a drone carrying drone. So it's like a fixed wing aircraft drone that carries drones on its wings below it, which I think is a pretty cool looking piece of kit. And I also got a picture of the drone I talked about that had mines for wheels. So this is a Ukrainian kamikaze drone with a very unusual design. It uses TM62 anti-tank mines as wheels. As I said before, these are pretty heavy, about 10 kilograms. So rather than carrying it on top, these are round, use them as the main part of your wheel, and as long as you've got a decent trigger mechanism, then you don't have to carry the heavy mines as well. It just becomes part of the functioning aspects of the drone. So I thought that's quite clever, interesting from Ukrainians there. Now, SBU General Hunter shared footage of machine gun naval drone with a range of 1,700 kilometers. Wow, they can protect the Black Sea from Russian naval drones for several days, he said. So that's good news there. And Ukrainian Sea Baby naval drone here, a different one, is armed with an MN-103 Manta bottom mines, according to Militiani. The Ukrainian missiles. Oh, sorry, that was something else. The Ukrainian missile strikes on Sevastopol were part of a larger operation by the SBU and the Ukrainian Navy, which resulted in the explosion of 5 Russian ships on mines. Right, and it could be these mines that have been laid. Bottom mines, I presume that these are mines that sit on the bottom of the sea, but not crazy deep. So when you have drones attacking places like Sevastopol and not getting through those booms, it might be that actually they're pretending to really want to get into the port, but they could be actually trying to drop mines on the bottom of the sea in a not very deep place that can then detect when a large ship goes above it and then explode, causing problems or do something funky, maybe float up to the metal and attach themselves. Or I don't know what the development of these are, but you get the point. So Sirski says, yeah, striking 1,700 kilometers deep into Russia, and this is constantly increasing as a range. Situation with weapons and military equipment remains difficult, but 96% of the drones are produced or purchased in Ukraine, he says, which is pretty good. Now, the Bulgarian parliament has voted against deploying troops to Ukraine, overwhelmingly in favour of a non-binding declaration on the 21st that would seek to halt any deployment of military forces to Ukraine. So they're not going to support Ukraine with troops. However, Switzerland could send around 200 soldiers for peacekeeping mission to Ukraine if there's a request and the government agrees. However, these are just hypothetical discussions for now, as peace isn't yet in sight, as reported by Reuters. And of course, you've got to pass stuff like that through the government, and we'll see how that goes. Most Danes, though, do back sending peacekeepers to Ukraine, according to a poll. Around 53% of Danes are in favour of sending peacekeepers to Ukraine after Russia's full-scale war ends, according to a poll published by Ritzau News on the 21st. So good news there. And then Japan's defense ministry has received wounded Ukrainian soldiers for treatment at another hospital. They already were doing it in one hospital, so now that's two. They have been receiving Ukrainian soldiers for treatment since June 2023. So excellent news from the Japanese there. Okay, moving on to a few Russian things. China is interested in a fair end to the war in Ukraine. The European market is very important to them, so they need stability in the region, according to Foreign Minister Spihar. But Budanov, so what's happening is, I forget what it's called. It's the annual Ukrainian conference on, I think, the war and whatnot. And you've got people like Budanov coming out saying all sorts of things, loads of people saying lots of things. But Budanov has come out and said, among the many things that I'll report some of them tomorrow, 148 North Korean KN-23 ballistic missiles will be delivered to the Russian armed forces this year. That's his information. Another thing he said, the enemy tried several times to use FPV drones from helicopters to counter our naval drones. But after these drones detonated twice on the helicopters, they stopped experimenting. And then, North Korea is actively participating in the war against us. It provides 50% of the ammunition needs for Russia. So that is another confirmation that the North Koreans are massively involved in supporting Russia in just a way that's far bigger than we might have thought. Now, I just want a separate section to finish off this video on Starlinks. They've been threatened. Well, there were rumours that the US was threatened to pull Starlink use. I wonder whether the American government used that as part of leverage, and then maybe Elon Musk said, please don't do that because I'm going to lose lots of money if you do that. And it's actually more difficult than you might think in terms of the legality, but I don't know. That's just massive speculation from me. So Max24 said Poland has bought, well, quoting Krzysztof Gałkowski, Poland bought Starlinks, which it gave to Ukraine. We pay and will continue to pay a subscription fee for satellite internet for Ukraine. I cannot imagine that someone could decide to terminate a business contract for a commercial service to which Poland is a party. So there's a lot of pushback, particularly from Poland, saying, hey, you can't shut them down because we're paying for a load of these. And then people outside of Ukraine are often unaware of this, but Ukrainians pay for each Starlink and monthly subscription. So Musk is profiting from those Starlinks. This is not a charity. This is a service provided for quite a handsome pay. So US negotiations pressing Kyiv for access for Ukraine's critical minerals have raised the possibility of cutting the country's access to Elon Musk's vital Starlink satellite service internet system, says Rob Lee. Three sources familiar with the matter told Reuters. So I would have thought they did do this, and then they probably realised that they can't, or at least that bluster has been seen through by the Ukrainians. So Alex Bond said, this guy, referring to Bakhmut Demon, a Ukrainian source, says he never BS's. Quote, they are threatening to cut off our Starlink. Well, I must say that this is serious and will cause problems, but communication won't go down everywhere because thanks to the Germans and the Swedes and others, we have alternative satellite communication means. I won't share any more details now, though. Indeed, Budanov has come out and said he says that some... Right, so Tim White says, many accounts write about Starlink being turned off or threats to do so. A few people sent me links to some big accounts saying so. I didn't report it because it wasn't true. Actually, I think it probably was true, but it has been rolled back, which has, and Elon Musk said it's not true. I just think likely they tried it and they've been told it won't work, which has just been confirmed by Budanov. On the contrary, he says some of Russia's have stopped working. So Budanov denies that this is happening. but indeed some of Russia's have stopped working, which is something I reported some time ago. However, whether or not this is going to happen or this was part of the minerals negotiations, it's probably in Ukraine's best interest to have a something in place in case it does, a contingency plan. And Rustem Umerov, the defense minister, said Ukraine is already working on alternative solutions in case Starlink is blocked. So there is that. Anyway, that's enough from me. Oh, and by the way, I did talk about this with Irina from GZYGA'S, which reminds me, check out that live with Irina. It's really fascinating. Loads of information on just drones in general, the work that they do as well. But I also want to alert you to the campaign that we have. If I can actually spell it, DZY. Thank you, GZYGA'S. The campaign that we have with GZYGA'S to raise funds for thermal drones for some units on the front line, and we've amazingly already raised a big chunk extra today, 7,275 for the 17,500 total that we're looking for. Just to remind you, if you do donate and you press donate, make sure you press copy ATP for Triad comment and put it in the reference field or wherever you can for the PayPal or Monobank or whatever payment, because that is super important, and it tracks, it allows, otherwise our figures won't go up, it will just go into a general GZYGA'S pot. So you need to put that comment in. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate all of your support. I know there's a lot of content coming out today. I know I'm not for everyone, but for those that do appreciate what I say and how I go about doing this, thank you so much. You are truly a part of the team, and yeah, big love to you all. And we just must remember to keep strong for Ukraine as well. Take care. Speak soon.